Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. We're very excited to be here. I'm John Narocco, principal of Jordan Jackson School. Over to my right, we have Denise DeGrassa, assistant principal. Uh, Kelly Kreisinger, our assistant special ed director, and Katie Peralt, our other assistant principal here. They'll be monitoring the chat. At the end, we'll have time for a Q&A, and as they monitor some of the questions, they may respond to you. Otherwise, we will have some time where I can respond to any unanswered questions towards the end. Again, want to thank you for joining us on this beautiful second day of spring evening, and I'm going to turn it over to our presentation. So give me 1 second while I pull that up on the screen. Okay, thank you again, everyone. It feels like the first day of school all over again, even though we're towards the end of March. Again, this is the family presentation for our return to full in-person learning 5 days a week, beginning April 5th. Just a quick note that this presentation is mainly for our students that are currently in our hybrid model. You'll be transitioning over to that full in-person learning, and any families that were in the virtual remote cohort that are now transitioning into the full in-person model starting April 5th. For families that are currently in the virtual remote cohort that want to stay in the virtual remote cohort or need to stay in that cohort, then things will not change for you. I just want to take a second to bring us sort of up to speed what brought us to this point. The return to full in-person learning recap, if you will, started with President Biden's call to reopening schools, of course, with safety mitigations. A little bit after that, we have March 5th, where our Commissioner Riley, the Commissioner of Education in the state of Massachusetts, gained approval from the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to amend the student learning time regulations. And by doing so, that means that district-wide hybrid and remote learning models would not count for structured learning time for students, which puts us in this position of coming back to full in-person and welcoming our students safely back to our schools here on April 5th for elementary schools. And again, for those families that needed to remain in the full remote cohort or virtual remote cohort, that learning is still available, and that student learning time certainly will count for those families and those students. So there's a little bit of a clarification there. I know it caused a little bit of confusion early on when all that information came out. Shortly thereafter, March 5th, on March 9th, our district presented our full return to in-person learning plan. Superintendent Murphy and Assistant Superintendent Conley presented the plan to our school committee. When I publish this presentation, you'll be able to click on that link. Link will take you to the on-demand page of our Mansfield Public Access site, and you can view that school committee presentation there, as well as other school committee presentations and meetings are available there. And just the last bullet point, of course, the timeline and availability of teacher vaccinations played an important role getting us to this point as well. In our next slide, I really wanted to cover the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's guidance on distancing. Really at Jordan Jackson, that's going to be the biggest change for us as we move into this phase. Since June of last year, the guidance has always been that we could be within 3 feet, no less than 3 feet, but at max and 6 feet is the recommendation. So at Jordan Jackson, we are have the benefit of being in the newest building in the district, built in 1992. Has the biggest class spaces. Some of our average class space is 825 square feet in most of our rooms, and some rooms are even bigger, a little bit over 1,000 square feet. So we've been able to thus far maintain to that 6 foot distancing and still accommodate our students in our cohorts and our daily students as well. But you can see from this slide that as of June of last year, that guidance has been at the minimum of 3 feet. And in addition, here's some recent information that the department has released in terms of their decision to continue to move schools forward at that 3 feet of physical distancing. And again, this presentation will be available online and it's being recorded now. So if I go a little fast, you can have the opportunity to read that afterwards. And so what does that look like? This is a model of one of our classrooms, and just shows you what 3 feet of distance from the edge of each seat looks like per the guidance. In this model classroom that we have set up in our building, it's a classroom for one of our virtual remote cohort teachers, so it's available for us to set up as a model for our staff to see what that would look like. This classroom has 24 desks. There is room for some more, and I just wanted to have that as an illustration. Our average class sizes are at about 22. And for many of us, I know myself, this is pretty much what a classroom would look like when I went to elementary school. So as things have certainly shifted in elementary education, where we work a lot in groups and have students working together. It'll look, different for our students as far as recent history is concerned, but for many of us, this is pretty much what we were used to when we went to schools. So you can see it would be a good idea to show you that spacing there, just to give you an idea of what that would look like. And of course, individual rooms certainly will vary depending again on the exact population of the students and the size of that room. So I'd like to really talk about Jordan Jackson, in a way that's not focused on just 3 feet. In some cases, will be close to the 4 feet, again, depending on the sizes. Another change for our students will be in terms of lunch. We have to utilize our gym as an additional space for our lunches. Currently, right now, we use our cafeteria and our multi-purpose room. But as we welcome the rest of our population in on a daily basis, we do need to maintain that 6 foot distancing for eating. So that means that we'll use the gym for that additional spacing. It will be minimum impact to our gym classes because again, we're heading into the springtime. So I know that our phys ed teachers are excited to be back outside as much as possible. And we do have a buffer within our current schedule around lunchtime. So we'll be able to move some furniture on those inclement days or those tables to be able to have our gym, our phys ed classes within the gym if we needed to, and still have some time to set up for lunches. So we don't anticipate phys ed being impacted on those days where teachers can't get outside and enjoy that fresh air, get students out and moving. I'm going to do a few things to help expedite the line. We're actually going to be implementing some changes as our students kind of wind down the month of March here before we get to April 5th. If you read the newsletter, we talked about a couple of different changes. One would be a barcode card for our students. They'll get that as they enter into the lunchroom, be able to just have the lunch workers scan their barcode card, and rather than looking up their name and juggling back and forth between students in that manner to pay for the lunch. We'll also just work on some logistical things in terms of lining up students to make things, certainly more efficient. We'll have additional food lines open, too, to expedite that. And again, as we implement some of these changes prior to April 5th with our cohorts A and B in the building, we'll be able to get a good assessment of what was most effective before we head into April 5th. Certainly, snacks, again, will be either outdoors, as I'm seeing many teachers taking their classrooms out these days. I always enjoy seeing a few classes right outside my window here on the spring days, enjoying snack and even having some read aloud time or just some time socializing with their classmates. So as we again continue into the spring, we can expect that most of the snacks will be happening outdoors. But if they are in the classroom, we would be having the students eat every other row, thereby maintaining that 6 foot distancing for eating. Just an update on recess. We're very excited, based on what we had been trying to do too prior to COVID, but certainly a lot of feedback from our student council and Mrs. Peralt in her efforts. We're going to be adding additional equipment and more options for recess. We do have many things that are already been purchased and brought into the school. We have a cart of materials for each classroom that will be set up so that each class can have its own materials, and then there will be certainly some common ones, and we'll be able to practice all the mitigation expectations that the DESE and the CDC have put out for us through the recent updates. We will maintain our recess zones. So many of you are aware that there are areas for each classroom to be using, and then we'll continue to do some rotations as well. And I'll talking a little bit about how we have some additional hand sanitizing stations, but we'll certainly continue to practice those mitigating factors that have helped us be so successful so far in getting to this point, practicing hand sanitizing and washing, certainly before and after we head out to recess. This is just a quick slide for those of you that are looking to sign up your students for busing, and if you haven't done so already. And again, as I post this presentation, you'll be able to click on these links. But if you went to any of our home pages, the Jordan Jackson homepage, you'll see this graphic out there as well. Be able to click on a link to sign up your family for the prorated ridership fee. And again, there's a maximum on the number on the dollar amount for each family, which of course is certainly very helpful. Again, we're treating this like the first day of school all over again, which is really exciting, but it also means a little bit of a refresher on all the expectations for students that are in place for this year. Again, those students that are in the hybrid model, transitioning to the full in-person model. A lot of this won't be new to them. Certainly for the students that are joining us from the virtual remote cohort, it'll be the first time in the building, so we'll be working to build up these expectations and communications with the students as well. Prior to April 5th, we're increasing the signage that we have in the building, refreshing some of the signage in the building, and as I mentioned earlier, we've already increased the number of hand sanitizing stations throughout the building as well. And just a refresher, just a note too for families that are going to be dropping off or picking up. It's just an overhead view of the entrance to our building. The red line being the path in which you would take to drive into the building to drop off and pick up. And then this is a little bit of a better view of that, where you can see a student drop off, pick up in the front, bus loop closest to the building, and then you can see each entrance there, the east office and the west office, where I am set back a little bit. As students approach, we'll continue to keep the same arrival as well as our dismissal process. We've been staggering our dismissal process a little bit more than we have in previous years, and we'll continue to do that. We actually have a live view from our offices as to the flow of dismissal, so we'll be able to slow down if we need to and make sure that students are keeping their distancing and getting out safely. We have staff stationed in and out of the building to help students with their transitions. But as far as arrival, we'll continue to maintain what we do already through our west entrance door, which is door number 5. You can see the classrooms that are listed on the side are the students that have class on the second floor. We'll enter the right door and then head right up to the stairs. And our students that are on the first floor will go through the left door and then proceed around the corner from there. This is just a view as they come into the door, again on the west side, so you can see what that looks like. And again, for our students that are currently in a hybrid model, this is not a change for them. This is something that we'll just continue to maintain and keep in place. Over on the east entrance, it's just the opposite there. Second floor classes will enter to the left door, and again, first floor classes to the right. And this again shows you what that looks like there. Certainly, as students enter the building, will be hand sanitizing, or they certainly could head to wash their hands as well. And then we'll be communicating that out, with the students and staff too. Currently, we have them doing that right before they enter the building, but with the increased flow of traffic, we can have them do that as they get to their classrooms. That's certainly acceptable too now under the new guidance. Just a reminder too to all the things that you said before that have gotten to this point. Wearing masks, hand washing, hand sanitizing, all and social distancing are all those mitigating factors that are so important. And by now, I think people are well aware that bandanas aren't effective face masks, and also we're going to again ask that students don't come to school with the masks that have vents. Another reminder for students, I think as we've progressed, it's been hard to keep everyone to keep track of their water bottle, but if you could just make sure that your students are coming to school with a water bottle. We do have the water filtration systems. We do have a lost and found in the cafeteria. There are a few, lost water bottles there as well. But if you could, please, remind your students to bring their water bottles with them as they come to school. And certainly if they can have them filled, that's great. But again, we have the water filtration systems, various locations in our building that they can fill their water bottles with. But that's definitely really important during these times that everyone has their own water bottle as they come in. And just another piece would be to again ensure that students, as they still continue to bring their Chromebooks back and forth, for learning, that they do have it charged prior to coming in to the building, and certainly with the ability to charge them here, and we'll still continue to provide students with whatever they need in the event that they forget things or something's broken. But just a valuable reminder to make sure that students are prepared before they come in the building. I know it's an announcement that they get on a daily basis before dismissal, but again, just want to be able to enlist your help in reminding your student prior to coming into the building. And again, this will just be another slide with a link for you for some additional guidance for in-person learning and student learning requirements from the DESE. I pulled some of that information in the beginning slides, so you'll be able to have a link here to get some more detailed information. And so with that, I'm just going to stop presenting, and we'll talk about some questions that I can see that Mrs. DeGrasse has been answering some in the chat, but I'll be able to pull us all up on screen here. There we are. And any questions that we can answer at this point? I'm sorry, Mrs. DeGrasse, I haven't really been able to pay close attention to the chat.
That's okay. One question that came up that might be beneficial to have a little more explanation would be around the student ID barcodes.
Mm-hmm.
So a parent had asked, our students, if we haven't had to use them prior to this, and if students haven't had the need to pay for, if lunch is free.
Mm-hmm.
The way I understand it is that the district is, in fact, having to submit information to the state for that in terms of a reimbursement. So all year, even though they haven't been putting in pins, they have been stating their name and have had to keep track. We've had to keep track of, the students who are buying. So the barcode would expedite that. The student wouldn't have to say their name, which has been hard to hear, as you can imagine, with masks. So the barcode would be scanned, and hopefully as students become more used to it, it would go faster.
Thank you. It's definitely something I could have mentioned early on. I appreciate that.
Another question that I'm seeing is around laptops. If we could explain a little more about students bringing them back and forth.
Yeah, I would want to make sure that students continue to bring them back and forth, and in the event that students need to quarantine, at least we know that they'll have their Chromebook with them. So that's really the driver behind making sure that they bring them back and forth. Just gonna take a look and see if there's anything.
I'm seeing another question about the reporting and recording of the number of COVID cases at the school. As of today at 12:30, it was updated, and it has been updated regularly. And I can put that number in the chat if anyone would like to click on it just to see the most recent information, COVID data.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a question, speaking of students that potentially could be quarantined, about learning options for them. We're currently, working very closely with our Mansfield Educators Association, with our teachers, to formulate a specific plan for that. I don't have that specific plan at this point in the presentation, but it definitely is, something that obviously we're going to be working to have the best comprehensive plan we can to focus on the students that are primarily in person, but also supporting students that are quarantined for a period of time, either as a close contact or because they're testing positive. So in the coming days, possibly within the next week, some specific information, and we'll all have some specific information school by school as to what you can expect if your student is quarantined during this time. And again, as far as Google Classroom, the utilization of that, it will be part of our specific information that we relay to families in terms of that plan. Yeah, I certainly understand that things can be challenging for students to be doing that. But again, just want students to be able to access what they need, in the event that they are out. And if there's anything specific that's certainly a challenge for a student, then we can always work with that family as well. Great question too about the virtual remote cohort. I know that the big concern is the switching between virtual remote cohort and in-person learning, and vice versa, and what potential impact that would have on staffing. And as of today, we're able to manage those transitions without having any impact to staffing. So if your student's in the virtual remote cohort with a specific teacher at each grade, as of time of this presentation, that's not changing. Great question about the library too. That's something that we're working on to try to be able to get students, access to the library. Our prior library media assistant had retired, and since that retirement, we don't have a person in that position. but it is something that as a school we're working to find an alternative way to do that. Thank you. Seeing a couple of positive comments. I appreciate them, but also want to thank our families for working really hard to help us all with this. I think the more that families have faced a lot of challenges, and being able to help their students maintain the mitigating factors has really helped us to to get to this point. I did have noticed a few students with some rolling backpacks, coming into school. So that may be a helpful suggestion as well.
And I think, John, you had mentioned bus registration and that this will be, this is recorded and will be available for families after this. But I know there were some original questions about how to access the bus registration. So that would be something that they could access right through the homepage or also through this presentation.
Yes, and on the district page as well. So there's we've been I want to thank central office for sending us some different graphics, particularly around the bus. So we've all been able to utilize the same graphics and same information and post them on all of our sites. And certainly, if there's any questions that don't go unanswered, families can feel free to email myself or anybody on screen. If it's special education related, certainly Ms. Kreisinger could answer that question, but please don't hesitate to email any one of us and we'll get you an answer as soon as possible. We'll have to get back to you on the bus schedules. I don't know exactly how they'll be impacted. I apologize. And again, we'll have a record of all these questions, so we'll be able to circle back to these questions and work to get them out to everybody. I'm not sure about the lunch menus. I know that they're always evolving. I'm very excited for had some different choices this year, so I don't know the answer to that question. I apologize.
Mrs. Peralt and I will be meeting with Mrs. Cosgrove and Mrs. Langtree tomorrow morning, so that's a question that we can ask and we can get back to everybody on that one.
All right, great. Thank you. As far as again, reverting back to hybrid learning, that the state has again made the change for student learning time, so we're all very hopeful that we can keep continuing in a positive direction and maintain the full in-person learning. But as always, our district and health officials are in constant communication. But that is something that they would be working on and consulting with the state with if we were ever in a position where that would be something that would have to be considered. But but the hope is to continue to maintain the progression that we're on. And again, I don't have specific information about what a threshold would be. No, there's no information updated about MCAS other than the postponement to that May-June timeframe. We're in routine meetings and trainings with the Department of Education regarding MCAS, but we have no information on that yet. And just for a point of clarification, if a district were to be implementing a remote or hybrid schedule, that student learning time would need to be made up at some point in time, either later in the year, over the summer, or next year. So I guess the technical answer is if the district were decided that we needed to revert back, or again in consultation with health officials in the state, then that student learning time that's not in person would need to be made up. And I don't have a definitive answer on homework. I think everybody's just been working really hard to make sure that students are able to be children too throughout all this. Certainly working to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to keep them progressing academically, but also keeping in mind that there certainly are different ways in which we can help students with their academic needs. But there are times where, especially at the elementary level, they need to attend to other things, like especially socialization and enjoying that after school time. Okay. Not seeing any additional questions coming in. So yeah, again, in the school model, in the virtual remote cohort, we are, working with a 5-day-a-week model. So. All right. With that, again, I'll wrap up, but just want to again reiterate that we thank you for your continued support. And if you have any additional questions beyond what was asked here tonight, please feel free to email, call the school, certainly call me directly or email me directly, along with Mrs. DeGrasse and Mrs. Peralt, and again, Mrs. Kreising, or if there's anything related to special education. Thank you very much for your time, and we are all very excited to welcome students back safely on a daily basis. Take care and have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.